The duty captain continued to knock at the door for several days. He would stay there a few seconds and coming inside would ask me to present him to the emperor, which I refused each time. This refusal could not last long without being anything but a farce. Colonel Harrison, followed by another officer and 2 aides, came to Longwood and asked to see me. Fearing a trap or an abduction, I went in to warn the emperor. He was talking with the Grand Marshal and at first did not think I should enter then. Changing his mind, told me to go ahead. It was to tell me that the duty officer had orders from the governor to present himself each day at General Bonaparte's door in order to see him and to arrest anyone on the spot who stood in his way to be deported. This was evidently intended for me, but he added, I am in charge of informing each of General Bonaparte's servants of the governor's will. Please send them in to me. Colonel, I said to him, I was able to hear your message as I was taken unaware, but do not count on me to send you anyone if it is not first authorized by the Grand Marshal. I left him to go to the emperor, to whom I repeated what had been said to me, and the order given me to send each member of his staff to receive the same message. Tell each of them that I forbid them to go. Colonel Harrison had to return to Plantation House, having only partially fulfilled his mission. But the next day, the following memorandum and note were sent to Count de Montauban. I, the undersigned Lieutenant General and Governor of St. Helena, have the honor of informing Napoleon Bonaparte that I have received various reports from the duty officer at Longwood, establishing his continued inability to view the person of Napoleon Bonaparte daily. Although he is said to be indisposed, he has refused to receive Dr. Arnott, principal physician on the island of St. Helena, or Dr. Verling, the doctor assigned to Longwood, or any other British medical officer who, in conformity with the rules established in Lord Bathurst's instructions of November 30th, 1818, could provide assurance morning and evening that he is indisposed and currently at Longwood. In consequence, the undersigned finds it unfortunately necessary to inform Napoleon Bonaparte, in accordance with the instructions in Count Bathurst's letter of November 6, 1818, he has granted the duty officer whatever means he finds it necessary to use to remove all obstacles he may find opposed to his obtaining daily access to a place where Napoleon Bonaparte may be seen. In the event of any opposition being made, or resistance or attempted resistance offered by one of the persons of Napoleon Bonaparte's suite, while he is executing the above-mentioned orders, the duty officer has also been authorized to immediately remove from Longwood the person or persons making such opposition or offering such resistance, and this person or persons will be held responsible for all consequences which may result from their actions. Additionally, the undersigned has observed through the duty officer's reports that in spite of the respectful manner with which he is charged with fulfilling his duties by the instructions given him August 11th, 1819, of which he has sent a copy, as well as other communications to Napoleon Bonaparte on August 11th and 23rd, 1819, he had found that the doors of Napoleon Bonaparte's residence were closed to him, and he experienced continually renewed difficulty in assuring himself that the person of Napoleon Bonaparte was indeed at Longwood, and in making his desire to be presented to him. In consequence, he has authorized the duty officer on days when he has not seen Napoleon Bonaparte before 10 a.m. to go to the hall or outer apartment of his residence, to that part of his house where his retinue is likely to be. And if he does not find a person who will take a message to Napoleon Bonaparte and inform him of his wish to be admitted to see him, to act on his own to procure means of admission while following, insofar as possible, the procedures established in the instructions sent to him April 11th, 1819, without recourse to any means of force until it proves impossible for him to be admitted otherwise. Hudson Lowe, Lieutenant General, Jamestown Castle, August 29th, 1819. At the time when this letter arrived at Longwood, the governor could have no further doubt of the emperor's presence in St. Helena because, feeling better and wishing to obtain news of Count de Montauban personally, the emperor had put on a coat, and with him leaning on my arm, we passed behind the house, thinking we would not be seen by the duty officer. The opposite happened. The first person we met before arriving at Count de Montauban's was the same officer who was able to reassure Sir Hudson Lowe on his fears of escape and also tell him how physically changed the emperor was. To the governor's letter was attached the following note signed by Sir Thomas Reed. Memorandum for the information of the persons in the retinue of or who live by or near Napoleon Bonaparte at Longwood. The duty officer at Longwood, having made his report to the governor on the absolute impossibility he has experienced for some days in obtaining a distinct view of Napoleon Bonaparte's person, and no response having been made to the proposals communicated to Napoleon Bonaparte on March 21st, 1819, to admit the duty officer to his presence, the governor finds it indispensable, following the instructions he has received to this effect from the British government, to order the duty officer to take the appropriate and necessary measures in order to daily assure himself through his personal observation of Napoleon Bonaparte's current presence at Longwood. At the same time, the governor orders that it be declared to the officers and other persons in the suite of who live near Napoleon Bonaparte, and it is hereby declared to these persons that if he has had recourse to this measure already amply justified, it is because Napoleon Bonaparte refuses to admit the duty officer to his residence, or, if he is ill, to receive a British medical officer who could give assurance each morning and evening that he is ill and currently at Longwood. After this declaration, anyone who dares attempt any resistance whatsoever will not only be irrevocably removed from Longwood, but will expose himself to all risks and dangers that may result, as well as all the consequences of such an action. Reed, Lieutenant Colonel, by order of His Excellency the Governor, St. Helena, August 19th, 1819. This letter and this note had no sooner come to the Emperor's attention than the following declaration was dictated to Count de Montholon by the Emperor, to be given to the duty officer if, as for some days past, he again presented himself to make his visit. The day before yesterday, you came to my home 3 times in the space of 2 hours. Yesterday, 3 times without my being able to understand your intention. It appears that you wish to violate the Emperor's apartments hitherto respected, and which are under the protection of the laws of the people and the specific acts of your government. I replied to you that only the Prince Regent and the Privy Council can make legal restrictions, and that the Prince Regent and the members of the Privy Council have known for the past 4 years that between enduring shameful treatment and death, there can be no doubt over the Emperor's choice. They have ordered nothing, at least that has been communicated to us, that changes the state of affairs and the established practices of 4 years, alone, ill, deprived of all communication with the universe, even with the British officers and inhabitants of this rock. He bears his throat to his murderer's sword. There is no need to seek any pretext. I have asked you to communicate the acts of the Prince Regent or the Privy Council, or even the instructions by virtue of which you act since the 11th of the month. You have not communicated any of these acts to me. I told you that as the Emperor does not recognize any duty officer, you have not spoken to him. He has not seen you nor the officers who preceded you in your post for 4 years. The declaration of August 16th answers all this. I append it to you here. Since that time, the health of this prince has become much worse, and he needs more than ever the assistance of his doctor, whom he demands. All the attempts made via servants are unworthy. They are useless because they are rejected by our manners and our customs. I repeat to you what I told you 2 weeks ago, that the Emperor prefers the refuge of the grave to suffering ignominious treatment. He can know no restriction in terms of your law if it does not come from the Prince Regent or the Privy Council. He has sacrificed all, abandoned all, and he is reduced to the most miserable life to satisfy the hatred of his enemies. If their vengeance has not yet abated, let them strike a single blow. It would be a kindness, because it would put an end to an agony that has lasted since August 11th, and which you seem to take pleasure in prolonging. General Count de Montholon, Longwood, August 31st, 1819. This letter served to have Captain Blakeney removed shortly afterwards. In accepting the position of duty officer at Longwood, he had understood that he was being offered a post of honor. The role he had been obliged to play went against his nature. He asked to be removed and was replaced by another captain of the 66th. A few outings by the Emperor, either on foot or in his carriage, put an end to the offensive correspondence from Plantation House and the daily visits by the duty officer. All the time the Count de Montholon's illness lasted, the Grand Marshal came twice a day to see the Emperor. As soon as her convalescence began, Countess Bertrand also came. All three of them, after an outing on foot or by carriage through the woods of Longwood, would go get news of Count de Montsalon. I had the honor of sharing some of these walks with the Emperor, not wanting to disturb the Grand Marshal or Count de Montsalon, who was not yet fully recovered. He took me with him several times in the morning on the path through Deadwood. One day, when he found he was tired, he sent me to notify the stables so they would bring his carriage, and I accompanied him on several trips he took. Another time, it was on a Sunday. The workmen were not at the house under construction. The residence was already sufficiently advanced that its layout was recognizable, and we went there. He found the interior layout poor. My room, he said, was far too away from his own. He showed me where doors could be cut to facilitate serving. He found the rooms large and airy and went down to the service quarters, not suspecting that the stones in which he walked would serve to build his tomb. He nourished the hope that this visit would not be known to Plantation House, but he was wrong. The governor was informed of it. Once Count de Montsalon's health returned, these privileges no longer fell to me and rightfully reverted to Count de Montsalon, whose every moment was given over to the emperor, with the abnegation and a devotion that came to an end only with his majesty's death. The governor, based on the instructions he passed on, could have applied his Longwood rules to Count de Montsalon and the Grand Marshal because of several letters written to him and signed by these gentlemen. He never dared do this for fear of the repercussions in Europe, and also because these gentlemen's signatures only covered the reproaches the emperor was addressing to him. Things had reached that point when on September 21st, the Grand Marshal came to inform the emperor of a ship's arrival from Europe, carrying on board two priests, Father Bonavita and Vignali, a surgeon, and Tomarchi, the butler Courceau, and the cook Chandelier, who had been sent from Rome by Cardinal Fesch for his service. The governor had them come to Plantation House to dine and surrounded them with attentions, believing he could extract from them what he wanted before they arrived at Longwood. Informed of this contact with a man who lacked every courtesy, to the point of keeping close to him those who could have given him news of his family, the emperor became so angry that he put off receiving them till the following day and asked the Grand Marshal to see each of them, as if the Grand Marshal's passage between them and the governor could wash away the impurities stemming from the contact they had had with Hudson Lowe. Among the arrivals, whom we received with joy for the emperor's sake and for our own, was Father Bonavita, whom I had known on the island of Elba as Madame Mare's chaplain. After so many misfortunes, we saw each other again with strong and deeply felt emotion. According to what the Grand Marshal told him about the personnel sent to him, the emperor, while taking into account the devotion which he appreciated, appeared to be little satisfied. The doctor was unknown to him. Of the two priests, the younger had studied medicine, and the older, whom he had known with Madame Mare, could offer him few conversational resources. It was, however, what they should have concentrated on. Learned men such as doctors and priests could have been a great fortune for him. He would have discussed the theology with the priests and all kinds of other subjects with a doctor who had knowledge of more than his own art. They send me, he said to me, the Grand Marshal, a man already broken by the years and whose entire life was spent in Paraguay. What kind of resource can that be for me? I am surprised they did not ask France to send me a doctor from one of my armies. Larry would have been glad to attend me. They should have chosen a man whom I could trust. Instead, they send me a young surgeon and a priest who dabbles in medicine. They couldn't have done anything more stupid. I certainly recognize Colonel Fesch's hand in all this. I am a great enough lord, it seems to me, that they could have given 30 to 40,000 francs a year to a man who would come to offer me his services. Although the emperor was then complaining of the pain in his side, no one could foresee that 18 months later, one of these priests, Father Vignali, would walk before his coffin and bless his grave. As I have already said, the emperor did not receive them the day of their arrival. He summoned Chandelier and Courceau. The first was Princess Pauline's cook in Rome and had been sent by that princess. Courceau had served Madame Mare. They came in together. The emperor asked each of them several questions about his family and Madame Mare's health. What was her house in Rome like? Did she receive foreigners? What was the cardinal doing? Courceau answered all those questions, saying, among other things, that Madame's generosity was never refused to French military personnel who solicited her help in getting to America. Her Imperial Highness bore with courage and resignation the pain of knowing the emperor to be in St. Helena, and she never sat down at the table without saying, "If only I could send this supper to you, my son." All that she owned was certainly at the emperor's disposal, And the cardinal, what is he doing? Asked the emperor. Sire, his eminence keeps Madame company and leaves her only to go look at his paintings. Is his gallery attractive? It is said to be very valuable, and he intends it to go to your majesty. When he interrogated Chandelier, the emperor asked him to what Princess Pauline was doing. Sire, Chandelier replied, Her Highness receives many people, and she never speaks of your majesty without her eyes filling with tears. She would very much like to receive permission to come stay with the emperor. She has instructed me to tell you this. Lord Douglas, who was with her when I had the honor of seeing her before my departure, told her that we would perhaps not find your majesty here. I could see that he was giving her Imperial Highness false hopes. When he said in front of me, I can assure you that they will no longer find the emperor in St. Helena. That's fine, the emperor said to them, telling them to leave. They seem to be good people, the emperor said after they left. Put them down for 2,500 francs in wages. Tell them Pierron to get them each settled in their duties. Night had tempered the previous day's bad mood. All that Count Bertrand and Count de Montauban had said about the priest and the doctor did not dispel the irritation he had felt on learning of their visit to Plantation House. The next morning, the emperor summoned them, the priests first. Father Bonavita and Father Vignoli knelt when they neared the bed in which the emperor was lying and kissed his hand. The emperor told them to sit down, asked them questions about his family, and then talked with them for some time. To everything he was told about Madame Mare's love for her, he replied that his mother had always loved him very much. He and Princess Pauline had been the spoiled children of the family, and in the great crisis which she had found herself, Madame had always shown a superhuman courage and strength of character. He talked to Father Bonavita of his age, his health, the dangers of his voyage, and his fear that the intemperate climate might be harmful for him. He asked a few questions of Father Vignali about his stay at the St. Sulpice Seminary on the island of Elba, spoke to him of Corsica, where he was born, and asked him a few questions regarding his practice of medicine. He told Father Bonavita he wanted Mass to be given the following Sunday in his drawing room. They should arrange this between the two of them. Everyone would attend. He dismissed them both, expressing again his thanks for their coming to share his exile. The two priests were happy with the fine reception they had just received. Joy showed on their faces. When Dr. Antomarchi was shown in, he questioned him about his family, Corsica, where he had also been born, and his studies. He appeared satisfied by his replies and his knowledge, but he found him a little young and presumptuous. The Grand Marshal was asking to tell Father Vignali that at Longwood he would only be concerned with priestly duties. In dismissing the doctor, he said to him, I place Father Bonavita in your care. I fear that the cardinal has sent his good old man here, only to have him buried here. He's a respectable man who should be well cared for. All these people took up their duties. The doctor received wages of 9,000 francs, Father Bonavita 6,000, and Father Vignali 3,000, which the emperor told me to pay them. As that sum was not entirely necessary to them, he told me to give each of the priests 250 francs a month for his needs, by withholding 500 francs from Count de Montauban out of the 2,000 francs previously allocated when the Countess was still at Longwood, and to take 250 francs out of the house expenses for the doctor. Each had a Chinese man to serve him, and a common table for the three of them. The doctor had Dr. O'Meara's former lodging. Father Bonavita had those occupied by General Gourgaud, and Father Vignali had those of the captain of the guard, who was given other accommodations at Count de Montauban's. The following Sunday Mass was celebrated in the drawing room, and the entire household attended. The emperor left everyone free to practice his religion, but it would have made a bad impression to appear irreligious. The emperor was concerned with the priests' well-being, but saw little of them, as they were a meager resource in the way of conversation. They brought with them a case of books, the Commented Gospel brought by Father Bonavita, and a Bible already in the library were the only religious works at Longwood. It is not true, as Monsieur de Poterne stated in his book, Napoleon's Religious Conversations in St. Helena, that the emperor found intellectual nourishment in these two books, which he claimed were constantly on his table. The emperor recognized the beauty of the gospel. He sometimes read passages from it, and said that in Egypt one could cover the entire country with gospel in hand. But those works remained in the library. In St. Helena, the emperor read all kinds of books, even the New Eloise, in which he left some notations in his own handwriting. With the emperor's approval, the Grand Marshal entrusted the religious education of his children to Father Vignali, who later celebrated Mass on the Marshal's wife's residence for herself and her family. During the first calls, Dr. Entomarchi carefully examined the emperor's health. He gathered from the Grand Marshal, Count de Montalon, and myself the information that would allow him to make no mistakes in the application of remedies he wished to prescribe. Like his predecessors, he recommended exercise, rubbing the legs, which caused the swelling to decrease, making it easier for him to walk and rides on horseback and by carriage. Count de Montalon, now fully recovered, gave all of his time to the emperor. When he came to see him for the first time, the emperor told him that now he was alone. His table was his, and that in the future he would dine with him. There, he said, indicating me, is my nurse, since you have been in bed. He has served me both as secretary and reader. He reads perfectly and without tiring me, which I appreciate a great deal. It is true that General Gurgo's departure, the emperor, aside from having me read aloud to him frequently, often kept me near him to write under his dictation. I had managed a sort of shorthand that allowed me to follow him and to reread back, if he wished, the dictation he had just made. Those dictations copied over were reread and corrected by him, and then given to Saint-Denis to be copied and kept in manuscript form. It was particularly during the time when Count de Montalon remained in bed and that I became of more use to the emperor. His time was divided between Count and Countess Bertrand, and in their absence I was with him. Finding me more often at his side, he dictated to me the summary of Caesar's campaigns, saying to me one day, on that occasion, you will be able to tell your children that you wrote this work under my dictation. Often at work, the emperor had me awakened by the duty valet order in order to write, for since my illness, he no longer wanted me to sleep near him, although it disrupted his habits.